Backyard beekeeping, or stationary beekeeping, where you don't move your colonies around in large numbers on semi-trucks and bring them to blooms all across the country. If they're staying stationary in one spot, you have to keep their numbers low, and you have to feed them when they need it and protect them and care for them because they need people. Honeybees are not like other insects. They're hated by people who don't keep them. They don't want them stinging them. And if they try to take up residence in a tree in someone's yard that actually has a hollow big enough for them to survive, those people want them exterminated because they don't like them because they sting. And the problem with them is they're the only insect that I know of that dies when it stings. If the honeybee wants to protect itself and it stings, or its colony, it's dead. They lose their stinger and they die right away. And no other insect I know of does that. And they produce a lot of honey so that we won't kill them and we'll keep them. And like the purple martin bird and the bluebirds, they need humans to make nests for them. We have to make wooden boxes. They love these wooden boxes. They fly into the empty wooden boxes in the springtime to reproduce. One honeybee colony will have enough babies in it to where it gets overcrowded, and then it goes into another box. And oftentimes they go up into trees and wait, and I build them a box and then put them in the box. Or they fly right into the box. We call it bait boxes or swarm traps. And all they are is a man-made box in the trees. They always prefer that. And as far as making money, it costs me a lot of money to keep these bees. Always has. They have to be fed in the droughts. They have to be fed when it's been a very bad cold winter. They have to be medicated with organic things. If they have parasitic mites, kind of like dogs need to be treated for fleas sometimes, they're kind of like dogs. They are a domesticated insect. They don't do well in the wild. If we were to abandon honey and just not eat it anymore and forget about bees, they wouldn't make it in the wild. They would die. There's just no way they would survive. It's because so many people keep bees and care for them that we still have them around. They've been with us for so many thousands of years because they're necessary to pollinate our crops. When you have a large orchard, there's no insects there because people spray those orchards. And they have to have insects, pollinating insects, trucked in these boxes to pollinate the crops that we eat. And commercial beekeepers have a lot of money invested in their hives so they can make a business out of it. They have to buy insurance because they lose a lot of beehives to theft, and they lose a lot of beehives to starvation from overharvesting and not realizing that there was going to be a drought right after that, or an unnatural flood, or a late freeze, or an early freeze that destroys the bloom and they don't have any nectar for their bees. You never know what the weather's going to be like, and beekeeping depends 100% on the weather and predictions on the weather. And there's just a whole lot of things that can go wrong with beekeeping. So if you're getting into beekeeping, don't even think about the honey. Think about using it as a pet, or a fish aquarium, or an ant farm, because it's basically what they are. These are ant farms to me. They're fascinating ant farms. They are fascinating bird houses that I can watch birds nesting in. That's basically what I think of them as. They're like a fish aquarium, and basically they're like collecting stamps, or another type of non-money-making hobby. When I do get a harvest, which I had one this year, but it wasn't enough to pay for the food that I spent last year during the disaster. A lot of people lost their bees last winter because it was a very hard summer and they didn't know how bad it was going to be, and they harvested. Because I'm very, very close with the land and I garden, I notice whether my plants are blooming and producing nectar or not. Because when they're blooming, if they're wilting, they're not producing any nectar. It takes certain temperatures for them to produce. And a lot of times the bees can only get nectar early in the morning out of the flowers, or in other conditions and certain temperatures. And you have to be aware of that. Just because you see flowers around doesn't mean they're getting anything from them. I like to put a scale on one of my hives so that I can see how the weights go, and I can tell if the apiary is getting any nectar or not by whether or not that hive gains weight. Then I know, wow, those flowers are putting out, or whether they're not, and I have to worry. So, something precise like that helps me, but that's not necessary. It's just something I decided to do. So there's so many things you got to do. You've got to be constantly watching the hives for every little detail, because there's parasitic mites, and there's hive beetles from Africa, and there's moths, 2 different kinds of moths. They can take over parts of the hive that aren't being guarded. So you've got to be watching the hive all the time. They are definitely dependent on your continuous monitoring and care. They don't survive wild. They do not. There's just no place you can go and just see wild beehives all over the place in the trees. There aren't any trees like that. And there's just no weather that's that good for a honeybee, because honeybees produce so much honey that they don't need all of it. And they overproduce and spend too much time building the hive up too big. And then later on, they can't guard that hive from ants and moths and things like that. The beekeeper's job is to make sure the hives don't get too big, don't get too small, don't swarm at the wrong times of the year, make sure they have a viable queen in there, and that the queen isn't gone from the hive by some old age or natural causes, or has swarmed out at the wrong time of the year, like the fall. Any hive that swarms right now will be dead, because the drones, the male bees, they kick them out before now. There's no male bees anymore to make the queen lay eggs. So that's gone. We're too far gone for that. But there are ways around that the beekeeper has, like those little boxes I have over there. I can go get a queen from them and sacrifice that and put it in the hive. But anyway, I probably made this too long. I just want to let everybody know that wants to know, that doesn't know, that beekeeping isn't really a money-making thing. It's like keeping fish aquariums or collecting something. I don't know of any beekeepers that are making any money off their beehives to pay back for what they spent. But I do know that there are some bottlers who are purchasing honey that is from China or some other place, and they're reselling it and putting their label on it. Now, those people are high volume. They're probably selling thousands of jars a year and only have 1 or 2 beehives. They couldn't produce more than 12 a year. And they're making money. But as far as this goes, all of these beehives, they're not going to make very much. Even if you imagined each one of them being a case of honey, that'd be the most I could possibly get from this whole apiary. That's not enough money to pay for how much I spend and how much labor I put into building them up and keeping them alive and feeding them and medicating them, and just the labor alone. And of course, right now I'm getting stung, so we got our little pain we have to put up with, but that's worth it. Ouch! Bye-bye.